Hey, everybody. Bonjour. Welcome to the show. I would like to introduce to you, which way my hands are going, Lon Strickler, a very old friend of mine who does fascinating work in the paranormal and cryptid world. And we've been trying to get a date to settle to have him come on and be a guest for a while now. And welcome, Lon. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me,
Yeah,
Shari.
you're welcome. So I guess let's start at the beginning. What got you into all of this?
Well, I
Because
was
there's
young.
people here that don't know. So
Yeah, I was young. I was born and raised not far from Gettysburg, and in fact, that's where I live again. I lived here now, just outside of Gettysburg, and I had lived down in Baltimore for about 40 years. I moved down there after high school, and I moved back up here after my wife passed back in 2015. So I'm living back up here now. But anyway, it was I used to spend a lot of time on the Gettysburg battlefield as a kid. I used to ride my bike up 116 and during the summer and spend my afternoons and days, sometimes nights on the battlefield. Um, but one particular day, I was in the area of the Valley of Death. And for those people who don't know, that area was very active during the second day of the battle. There's an access road that runs between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the Wheatfield area. So I was on my bike. I was about about nine. And, back in those days, nobody cared. Kids going out riding around, they didn't care.
no, we leave the house at daybreak and not come back until the street lights came on.
Absolutely. So, so I was riding on the road, and all of a sudden, it's like this huge TV screen opened up in front of me.
Oh,
And it was weird. I mean, it's nothing. It's like nothing I never ever experienced before. And I was seeing soldiers, hearing gunfire, smelling gunpowder. Everything. The whole 9 yards. My senses were all open to it as well. And
as kids, we tend to be more open to that. I mean,
absolutely. And I was sensing all this stuff, not knowing why this is going on, not understanding. Of course, at 9, you don't understand this. And it lasted, from what I remember, about 30 seconds or so, then just vanished. And everything was back to normal. And that was probably the first time I had any type of experience other than maybe sensing spirit energy, which I didn't understand either. I mean, I've always been able to do it, and but I just didn't understand it. But at that point, after that had occurred, and I still spent I spent time on the battlefield the whole time I was a kid, living in South Central Pennsylvania, and I saw a lot of things. I sensed a lot of things. Spent a lot of nights there. Back then, you could spend your nights on the battlefield, just pitch a tent or just sleep out under the stars. And me and friends used to go out there. Me and girlfriends used to go out there. And it's almost like I was attracted to a lot of this stuff, and so that kind of started it off. And I've had several experiences. I had several experiences as I was younger, but when I moved after I got out of high school, I moved down to Maryland, and I lived down there for over 40 years, and then eventually moved back up here. But, of course, my story. I had a Bigfoot encounter back in 81.
Yeah.
Down in Sykesville, Maryland. And in 88, I had a winged humanoid sighting not far from where I am now, up at Camp Conawago. So, I don't know if I'm fortunate or to have all these encounters or these experiences. I don't know if it's drawn to me. The one thing that I do believe, of course, when with the Bigfoot sighting, that kind of opened up the cryptid world to I was very interested in what I had seen because I really wasn't sure what I had seen. Then I
Yeah,
found,
when you experience that kind of stuff, especially as a kid, you're like, wait, what just happened?
yeah, well, I was at
Did I
that
see
point,
that? Did I hear that?
at that point, I was 24, 25, and 24. And I didn't know what I was looking at. Of course, we knew about Foggy Creek and Bigfoot and the Patterson Gimlin film, but of course, this thing was huge, and I just assumed it was a Bigfoot, but I had never done any type of cryptid investigations. But I did after that. And in fact, there had been sightings of these, of what people were calling the Sykesville Monster, about 8 years previous to my encounter in the Sykesville area. And of course, I was lucky enough to know somebody who was a member of some of the families who had these encounters down by the river. It was an African American community, and I worked with one of the gentlemen, and he introduced me to a lot of the witnesses, and I found others as well that hadn't talked to the press. So I guess I kind of turned myself into a journalist at that point, and I was
When you
investigating all this.
experience something like that and you share it with someone and they accept it and believe you that you're telling them that, it encourages everybody else in their their satellite there that hey, you can talk to this guy because he's going to actually listen to what you've got to say
Yeah,
and
I
not
was
make fun
getting
of
good
you.
contacts. Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
So, I started looking into the cryptid phenomena, and I had always been interested in the Mothman phenomena. And for whatever reason, I had an opportunity to go up to Camp Conawago, where there was a lot of phenomena going on, lots of screaming and such. Scouts and troops were being scared out of the woods, and one of the guys I went to school with, who actually used to spend time on the battlefield with me when we were kids, we ran into each other, and he asked me about going up there, and we spent a weekend up there and had an encounter. And he and two other guys, he and myself and another guy, had an encounter with this thing. Red-eyed, 5 to 6 foot in height, dark in color, with
yeah, that would
wings,
freak me out.
and very similar. And this is what I find intriguing. Very similar to what people are seeing now in Chicago and the Chicagoland area.
Oh,
And
wow.
those sightings kind of fell into our laps back in 2011, but more so in 2017. And we, myself, Manuel Navarrete, and Tobias Whalen, we started doing the investigations, and it's gotten to the point where it is now, and it's still going on, mostly around the O'Hare International Airport now. But at this point, we've got about 156 sightings that we believe that are credible
Holy
sightings.
smokes, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
So it's been very busy. I mean,
I know I had never even heard of Mothman until the movie came out
right,
with Richard Gere. And I
right.
remember coming home from work one day, and my son, who was still a high school student at that time, was like, "Mom, you got to sit down and watch this movie I saw today. It's awesome." I was like, "I don't have time to watch a movie right now." And he's like, No, it's starting in a few minutes. Before we had DVRs. And he said, yeah, just sit down and watch a few minutes of it. Within a few minutes, I was hooked. I did not get up from the sofa and leave till the movie was over. And I was like, holy smokes, that blew me away. I didn't know that existed. Bigfoot, yes, I'd heard about growing up in Louisiana and Southeast Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of Bigfoot or Dogman or here in Louisiana, the Rougarou, all of that kind of stuff, in the swamp and in the thicket. It's like you don't go in the thicket, you don't go in the swamp, especially at night, because there's things in there you don't want to meet. And so you tried to be smart about that. As kids, we kind of stayed away from it because, of course, grown-ups would scare you with, it's going to eat you up or drag you back into the swamp and you'll never be found again and that kind of stuff. But
well, I get a lot of reports in Louisiana. I get a lot of reports from
yeah.
the Gulf, the South, in the Gulf area all around. To be honest.
Oh yeah.
And
we had just this past year and a half ago. I'm trying to remember. Down near closer to New Orleans, there on the railroad tracks, one of the little bridges there that the train runs over, and they started seeing, people started reporting ghosts, that they were seeing floating creatures, from the train. I don't know whatever came of it because it was like in the news for a while and then it just disappeared. I guess people got bored with it. And that was still during the pandemic. So I think that was it. A lot of people couldn't really go out and do anything or look,
Somebody commented in the in your comments about was asking if it was near Des Plaines River Trail or Forest Preserve near Hare. And yeah, I mean, we've had sightings there. We've had sightings all through the area east of the airport, and even in those preserves as well. We've had other humanoid sightings in there, and those preserve areas, which the Chicago area is very well known for. We've had a lot of occult activity in there, but we have had humanoids and winged humanoid sightings in there as well. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's really not an area around Chicago that hasn't been affected by these in some way.
Yeah, Everglades. I never lived down in the Everglades of Florida. I lived up in Northwest Florida, Fort Walton Beach, Destin area, and you would hear rumors of don't go south into the swamp, but growing up in Louisiana and Southeast Texas, it was like, well, we already knew you don't go messing in the swamp.
Yeah.
There are things that will eat you in there. There's nothing spooky about it, just hungry critters. So, yeah, I'm sure people were scared to go there, Lisa. Ivana's a real sweetie. She's very, very talented. Everybody in here is. We got a room full of readers. And
well, I'm an intuitive as well, so I mean, of course, I've done a lot of cases using that, and I actually use it in my cryptid investigations to some extent.
Well, Heather, Indigo Jaguar Intuitive Arts that you see, let's see, that's her right there. I've done a couple of shows with her. She does some cold cases. We've done some spooky type stuff. We did one on Myrtle's Plantation down here. We did another on the Rougarou down here, and then we did a third one. What was the third one, Heather? I don't remember what the third show was on. We did another one. But I know she's real interested in this kind of stuff. Plus, we've done a couple of cold cases, just reading on missing persons. Is this person dead? Is he alive? What are we picking up? And that's kind of interesting. I know there are some that do more political readings, and I do those if I'm on someone's channel or I get asked that question, whatever I pick up. But yeah, the paranormal stuff has always been really intriguing to me. I guess because I saw ghosts as a child. I lived in a haunted house. So when you experience that firsthand, somebody else can't come along and tell you, no, that's not real. You're like, yeah, it is real. because I know I'm not crazy.
In my case, my parents really never knew anything about what I was experiencing. I never told them. I lived in a very conservative area, and I just didn't bring it up. And we didn't live in a haunted house, but I would investigate when I got older. When I was in high school, I would go to certain areas and do things, but I was kind of left to my own vices at that time. So, I just
Yeah,
didn't really let them know a lot of what was going. They know, I mean, they knew as I got older, and but yeah, it was something I never really talked a whole lot about. I talked to kids I was in school with, kids I was close with. Then of course, even my first wife didn't really know much about what I was doing, and but it was always something I kept very close to me and kept quiet about. But eventually, after I started having the cryptid encounters and started doing investigations and started writing, of course it got out there. And I it was a time I didn't the blog I didn't start the blog until 2005. I was never
yeah,
really much of a writer. I didn't even like reading that much. And that all changed. I mean, it was almost like the light bulb went off, and you know, 9 books later and 17 years on the blog and having an
yeah. You've
investigative
been at it.
team.
I've been at it a long time. Because the
Yeah,
blog was already up and running when we met.
it's
And
about I've been doing this for a little over 45 years now.
yeah, so I mean, I know I had experiences as a child, and family would just look at me and say, "Oh, she's got the gift." It was like not a big deal. It wasn't
Hmm.
discussed. It
Hmm.
wasn't explained, but it wasn't like, "Oh, that's evil," or "Oh, don't you're making stuff up." It was never that way. It was just like, "Oh, okay, you got it too." So it was like an afterthought.
Hmm.
Um, but it would have been nice if there had been somebody around explaining to me what was going on and what I was seeing and hearing and whatnot. Now, I've never seen a Bigfoot. I have been out in the woods where I've heard stuff that didn't sound normal. Just noises,
Hmm.
kind of that animalistic sound,
Hmm.
um, kind of a huffing type. And it spooked me enough that it was like, okay, we got to go. We're not staying here. We're going.
Right.
Um, so it's like I love to watch and hear about that stuff, but to go firsthand and look at it, I'm a big chicken. Um, but
Yeah, I never really, went out for the sole purpose of finding things. It seemed like things just came to me.
right,
And that's why the whole the Sasquatch hunting and hunting for this and hunting for that is kind of foreign to me. Really. I hear about it, I read about it, I talk to people about it, and I talk to people who've been doing this for a long time. But it has it has seemed to drawn to me, even with alien activity and alien abduction and such. I wrote a book about that, and I've had people who have had some very, very disturbing cases. I had one client, and she wasn't even really a client. I didn't know her for more than a day. She was taken and has never returned. And
here's another
so
question.
that, yeah, I mean, it's been an eclectic bunch of phenomena for my case, because I haven't backed away from anything. I've if people needed help, I kind of opened up, and if I didn't know anything about it, I would start learning about it or try and research it. But yeah, it over the years it's grown to the point where it is now, and I can almost talk about everything. Yeah, there's things I can't, but I got an opinion, I guess, on everything now.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah.
And the older we get, the more ingrained that opinion becomes.
Well, of course.
But I know ever since the first time I heard you on Para X, which was the
Beyond the Edge
internet,
radio.
yeah, the internet radio, which just because I'd always loved that kind of stuff, but it was like, how do you find, there's like, I didn't know anybody that was into that. I didn't know where to find information. Once in a while you'd come across a book, or you'd see something in a newspaper, but very rarely did you really see or hear anything. And when I found Para X radio, I was in seventh heaven. I was like, oh wow, people who have experienced some of the same stuff I've experienced. This is cool. And I just started listening and learning, and there were you, and there was the two gentlemen that had a show, and one of them passed away several years later. I can't remember their names, Tom and something and Tom.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I don't remember. They were like a show before or after the one that you used to do. I know Eric did one.
Yeah, well, I was with Eric and Sean there for a while.
That's the other name.
And Eric and Sean, that was Beyond the Edge, and then Sean and I started Arcane Radio.
Right.
And we did Arcane for about 3 or 4 years together. Then we we got on another show on Memphis radio. We did that for about 6 months. Butch Witkowski was with us on that. And after we got off of that, then I restarted Arcane Radio. I did Arcane Radio for another 5 years. And Arcane Radio was rebranded to Phantoms and Monsters Radio, which is what I'm doing now. We've been doing this now for about a year there.
Okay. Like I said, I've kind of kept my toe in it, and I knew you were running a YouTube channel because, of course, we were friends on Facebook. So, for a long time, I rarely could catch a live. I still, most of the people I like to listen to, I rarely catch them live. I'm usually listening to it on replay when I'm at work or something, and they're used to hearing my stuff going on in the background in my office. And but it was just always intriguing to me, that people
we built a pretty nice audience. I go live on Friday nights at 9 Eastern time, but then I usually do a Wednesday show every other week where I actually read cases and reports that come into me.
Okay.
I call that Phantoms and Monsters Personal Reports.
I see you got one coming up this Wednesday.
I got one coming up this Wednesday. And then, of course, Bernadette McDaniel has started her show on, and she's part of our team as well. My investigative team, Phantoms and Monsters Fortean Research, and in which we've got 20 plus members. And
the link to all of this is in the description box below, y'all. So if you want to go check Lon's channels and his Facebook and his blog and all that, all the links are down there. Go and
we're always doing something.
Enjoy yourself because it's very interesting reading. I mean,
and then of course Vincent Richardson's going to start his show, which is just simply named V. It's going to be a conspiracy, alien, and such show. And he's going to premiere Wednesday night after my show. So and we're kind of expanding out, trying to build it up. It's not a whole lot about making money. It's a lot about getting the word out there and trying to promote certain.
Well, and let people know that do go through these experiences. You're not alone. You're not crazy. Other people have seen or experienced this or been involved in something happening to them, and there are people that you can talk to that are going to believe you. and help you work your way through it, because for some people it can be very traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not to, I mean, besides just the factor of being scared to death, I mean, because you don't know what the hell is going on. But I mean, you know, it's nice when you can talk to people who accept what you're saying, and you know, don't look at you like you're nuts or you're just making something up to get attention.
Mm-hmm.
And uh but I mean, that's one of the things I've always listened to you for so long, because I always knew that whatever I was reading, whatever story I was reading, or whatever y'all were talking about, it was stuff that you investigated or that people on your team investigated.
Mm-hmm.
That I knew it wasn't just somebody pulling something out of their ass and talking about it, you know. So, and that makes a big difference, not just to me, but to a lot of people, is to know that they're actually listening to and or reading something from someone who's had the experiences themselves, who has decided to make it his life's calling. Because in a lot of ways, it's like the universe plopped you down and said, "That's our guy right there. He's gonna help get the word out." You know, we have a one of the readers that we have in our group, who is amazing when it comes to crystals and rocks, and it's just, it blows my mind how she just knows all this stuff and all the stuff she gets off of them.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a big Bigfoot proponent. I mean, she talks about Bigfoot quite a few times. And first time I heard her mention it, I thought, oh, I got to hook her up with Lon.
Well, I do use crystals and some divination in my work, in my remote view work as well. And so, yeah, it has helped in a lot of cases. But yeah, I'm a strong proponent of using crystals and minerals and stones.
I'm starting to learn a little about them. I'm slowly building up a collection of you know, smaller stones and rocks, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out what. A lot of times I'll make sure I carry something in my pocket, and in the morning it's just a matter of running my hand through the bowl, what feels right, you know, and then that's the rock I'll pick up and put in my pocket and carry with me for the day.
Yeah,
And
this is that I can talk a lot about crystal. It's something I had been involved with pretty early on, but not to the degree as to, I actually collect specimens and stuff now, but a lot of those specimens and such I use in my work. And for those, I don't know how many people in your audience do use crystals and stones, but
I think probably a lot of them do, or
yeah,
they're kind of like me. They're just kind of learning about it and
yeah,
dipping their toes in. So yeah,
I'm planning on doing a show specifically on crystals at some point. Um, but I have talked about it in the past. But there are certain stones and certain personal pieces that I have used for
yeah,
many years. And but there are particular types of crystals and stones and minerals that I feel work better than others. And I kind of stick to those, and it's kind of done me well.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. Well, that's me. As I've been slowly trying to learn a little bit about them.
Hmm.
You know, like I said, now I tend to carry one in my pocket every day.
Hmm.
I mean, not like I have a bunch. It's just a small handful, but just it's when I first started doing it. At first, it felt weird, and then it was like I ran my hand through the bowl, and it was like the rock I was supposed to carry that day was hot when I would touch it,
Hmm.
and so I would be like, "Oh, okay," and I'd put it in my pocket. Well, the next day, I could pick up the same rock, and it was cold. There was nothing there.
Hmm.
Another rock would be hot, and so it was like, okay, there's something to this. I'm trying to learn about it, is, you know, a little bit at a time as I go. It's the same with, you know, with opening myself up for I've always been intuitive, had gifts, but they were so packed in and not let out that I
Mm-hmm.
pretty much choked them off completely. And
Mm-hmm.
so now that I've opened that door back up and started delving back into it again, it's like now I have things hit me left and right. It's like, whoa, whoa, wait. I can't catch up. Hang on a minute. It can get a little overwhelming at times.
Well,
Uh,
in my case, I use a lot of times I use vibration. I can pick up vibrations of certain stones, but for the most part, and when I do intuitive work and even remote view work, I, in my mind's eye, pick up on certain colors. Now, I know some people have been able to do that, but certain colors in my mind's eye can give me direction of what I'm experiencing or what is near me. That's how I sense spirit energy, by seeing a combination of colors, and then I
oh,
know it's
okay.
around me. Yeah,
Okay,
and
cool.
of course, there are other things that I experience when spirit energy is around me. In particular, my olfactory senses open up. I smell cinnamon.
Mm.
I taste cinnamon sometimes. Uh, there are certain scents that or odors that I can distinguish when I know when they tell me that I need to be careful, like lavender and frankincense in particular.
Oh,
So I have utilized a lot of this stuff in my work,
yeah,
and I use it as protection for a lot of times. And but no, it's and it takes time. It's just not one of those things that you can kind of grab this and that and start. It's a hit and miss thing. I used to make talismans uh, with the lesser keys of Solomon, and I used to make talismans and send them out to clients. Um, After a while, that started to pan out. It's a hit and miss thing. It takes
yeah.
time, and
Well, I know I started using a pendulum about 6 months ago,
mhm,
and still getting the feel for that. But it's amazing how I can sit there and hold it and it doesn't move. And I ask a question and it'll start going in the yes direction and be in the midst of going back and forth. And I'll ask it another question and watch it literally stop and change directions for the other.
mhm,
He's like, okay, this
mhm.
is wild. And it takes a little bit not to spook yourself with it. Um, like I said, I had my innate gifts buried for so long that they were just about non-existent. And then the minute I
Mhm.
cracked the door open and started sticking my toe back in the water, it was like whoosh, here it came.
Yeah.
um, so I'm still learning how to kind of siphon it out and figure out where I'm at and what I'm doing. And um, and it helps when you're around other people who are also intuitive,
Yeah,
because they can bring
I
things out in you that
I've
you may
used
not.
certain type of divination. I've had some bad experiences with Ouija boards,
I don't use those.
and I just stay away from those.
I had a
If
very bad
if
experience with the Ouija board. I will not use
Yeah,
it.
they it's interesting. I was at a conference back in 2013 in Gettysburg, and a lot of the people who were with me at the time. Oh, I was actually with Beyond the Edge Radio. It was Sean and Eric
Yeah.
and I were all there, and this guy who set up the second day beside us was selling old Ouija boards, and John Zaffis was standing there with us. And those things were right beside. I had to get up and move because the energy coming off those things was just really messing with me.
Yeah.
It was just it's something that you know people people that use those things don't really know how to clear them out. And they are, and the fact of using them the way they do. is just very dangerous. I've heard so many bad experiences that people have had with those things. Now, I use other divination. I've used tarot. I've used crystal balls. I've used scrying and pendulums and such. But mostly I stick with the crystals as far as doing divination. I can normally get whatever I need to find out using just the crystals themselves.
Cool. I know with me, it's the cards. I'm and it's more of the oracle cards than tarot.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started doing this again, I started out with tarot cards, and one day I happened to see somebody. I was watching somebody's show, and they were using oracle cards, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, something just clicked for me in that moment. It's like, that's what I was supposed to use, and I just knew it. And so I started thinking, okay, I need to start shopping around for an oracle deck. And before I could spend any money and buy one, I won a deck from one of the other readers who was doing a giveaway on her channel.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happened my name got drawn. I won an oracle deck, which I still use to this day. I love those. I love using the oracles much, much better when I'm trying to read for somebody. It just comes out clearer for me. But I do also do the tarot cards as well. And like I said, as I've opened myself back up, things are starting to come back to the point that now it's more of in the middle of doing something. Suddenly I just know something. A couple of times I've had the voice come back that I used to hear when I was a little girl
Mm-hmm.
to tell me it's this or it's that or it's the other. And that was kind of cool, that happened again. And I was literally on air live on someone else's channel one day. And when I got hit with a download, first time it had ever happened to me, when I was in the middle of doing something else. And it was kind of weird, just kind of like, whoa, what was that? And it took me a minute to process, what had just happened. But yeah, Ouija boards, I had a really bad experience when I was a teenager with one that scared the ever living hell out of me. It was like, I took that thing outside and set it on fire and burned it. It scared me so bad. I've never had another one near me since. That there's just something about them. I get near them and I start getting that creepy crawly feeling up my spine. It's like, I don't know what tried to connect to me that one night when we were using one, but it's like, I don't ever want to feel that again. Not ever again.
The experience I had, and if you don't mind me telling it, I was at a party. I was in high school. We were in a friend's basement. There was about 20 of us there. And it was a weekend night. And I was sitting on the sofa with a girl who was a friend of mine. And there were a bunch of kids at the coffee table, around the coffee table, using this Ouija board. And as I sat there, the guy across the coffee table, I didn't know who he was, but he kept looking at me and giving me the eyeball. And I'm thinking, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And it was ever increasing as we were sitting there. So anyway, eventually it got to the point where he just literally jumped up on his feet and jumped over the table and attacked me.
Wow.
And it took about 2 or 3 of the guys there to get him off me. I couldn't get him off of me. And I was an athlete back then, so it was kind of, it was kind of freaky, the much power this guy had. And after they got him off me, he set him back. He kind of broke out of it. And he said he didn't know what had happened. So anyway, not long after that, we were, the board was still sitting there and nobody was around it. And I don't know what we were doing, but all of a sudden, a couple of us noticed that the planchette started rising off the board. And we jumped up and started heading to the other side of the club room where the bar was, and just 20 of us standing there looking at this thing hovering above the board. It was hovering about 2 or 3 feet.
Wow.
Just hovered there. And all of a sudden, this thing slammed down on the board. The planchette legs broke out, and you never seen so many kids run up the stairs. That was that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after that, I really had no intention of ever being around those things. I have heard so many stories since then of what, people have had possessions, oppressions by these things, the Zozo phenomena and such.
Yeah.
There seems to be a specific, I'm not going to say demon, but entity that is associated with this. It's funny. Somebody had mentioned there that they saw Barnes and Noble or selling these things. My dad had a hobby shop. We had a hobby shop in our family for, about 75 years till I finally closed it down. But he used to sell the original Ouija boards in there when they opened the store. The old Parker Brother Ouija boards.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people remember the box. It was kind of a shadowy figure on the box. And
With like an all-seeing eye on it.
Well, no, it was like a Grim Reaper. It was kind of a pale yellow and black cover on the box. And those were the original boxes from Parker Brothers. They actually made them down in Baltimore. That's where they started at. And it's funny, when we went in there to clean the store out after my dad had passed back in 2018.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was just before my mom passed.
We went into the storeroom, and there were 5 original boxes sitting up there on the shelf that he never put out. And I just gave those to the auctioneer and let him sell them, get for what I didn't want nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
So, but
I know the board that we had used, the one and only time I ever used one, it was a homemade board.
Right.
One of the guys had seen one in the store, and so he made one.
Yeah, a lot of people did at the time.
It was like, we can play this game and it'll do. And so it was like everybody was sitting around it and doing it, and of course the planchette, nothing moved, nothing happened. And they finally, and something about it just creeped me out. They finally talked me into coming over and sitting down with them. And the minute I touched that damn planchette, it started zooming all over we couldn't even keep our fingers on it. It was just zooming all over the board. And I literally got up and was like, no, this is just, and I felt something very oppressive come over me.
Yeah.
And it scared the hell out of me. And I took it outside and I burned it.
Yeah.
And,
well, burning is not a good thing to do. Burning is not a good thing to do with them. What I have done or advise people to do is to bury them. Either bury them or put them in the water and sink them or something like that. Yeah. But there have been investigators in the past and in present that believe that there's nothing wrong with Ouija board. I was a good friend. Rosemary Ellen Guy was a good friend of mine. And she wrote books about Ouija boards and divination and such. And she never really found too much wrong with them.
I know several people that use them.
Yeah,
to this day.
She used
to buy them, and it's like, nope, not for me.
Yeah, she did black mirror scrying and a whole lot of different things.
Yeah,
I just kind of stayed away from all that. But no, she was. She said that she believed that there was nothing wrong with it, and but I know other people feel the same way. The energy on those things, it sticks with them, and I can feel it. And I don't want anything to do with it, so I just stay completely away from it.
I don't know who I heard that from, Andrea. but wasn't until years later I was telling somebody about that night, and they were like, "Oh my God, you shouldn't have burned it. That just released it into the air or something." I was like, I didn't know what to do with the thing. I just knew I wanted it out of my house, and I didn't want it to come back in, so I set it on fire out in the
Mm,
yard. I just
mm.
left it out,
Oh, I know a lot of people who
And
have.
um, I don't know. I mean, somebody else here may know why it would or wouldn't be wise to burn it. I had always thought burning something would purify it as well, but
Well,
evidently not necessarily. I
I think
mean,
the explanation is that the energy is released out of the board when it burns, and it just meanders around. If anybody's nearby, they're going to be the unlucky one getting it, and or getting the attachment. And I've heard that from a few people. I don't know if it's true or not. Of course, I've never burned one. I've burned some other things, but I haven't burned that.
yeah,
I was raised I wasn't raised, but I had people in my family who were powwowers. Now, I don't know if you know what a powwower is, but
no, I don't.
in Pennsylvania, it's folk magic, and it has a lot of religious aspects to it. And, uh, the Pennsylvania Dutch used to have these witches. They call them witches, but they were hexmeisters, and they were actually the ones who did powwowing. But it was mostly for folk remedies and such. But there was a book that they used called The Long Lost Friend, and you can buy them now. It was written back in the early 1800s, but there's copies of it you can buy on Amazon. But I used to keep one with me all the time, even though I didn't espouse to the remedies and such that were in there. I always just felt it was good luck or talisman or something to keep with me. And a lot of people who believed in powwow did the same thing. But anyway, there was a famous murder case here in South Central Pennsylvania. They called it the hex murder, but it was the killing of John Rehmeyer, who was a hexmeister, a brecker, or whatever they call them. He would use this, but there were two gentlemen who lived in York who thought that Rehmeyer had put a curse on them, and they went to his home in the Rehmeyer Valley, which is called Hex Hollow now, but they went there and murdered the man. And it was a big trial, and they eventually were convicted and went to prison. I went to the house back in 1976. I had never been there. I've heard a lot of things. I read the book, the Lewis book, Hex is the name of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It tells the whole story about the Rehmeyer killings. And I went to the house, and back then it was all grown up. It's actually been all restored and everything now. It's an attraction, but back then the house was in bad shape. There was an old dirt road that used to lead off an old gate. Well, it was my senior year, and I did have my long lost friend with me, and I parked the car, walked down the road, and as I was walking down the road, starting to see the house in the distance, there was a man up in front of me. I thought it was a man, but he was looking down on the ground. He was walking around, but staring down on the ground. And I thought, well, maybe this is a caretaker, maybe even an owner. But I wanted to get permission to go look around. And I yelled at him, and I said, "Hey, how you doing? Hello, this." And I got no response. But eventually, he stood still, raised up his head, and he had no face.
Oh my God!
And I freaked.
Yeah.
I went back I ran back to my car, tore out of there. I got home, and I went back home. I was living at home then. I took my long lost friend, sat her on my desk. My girlfriend came over, and we were sitting there in my bedroom. We were talking, and she didn't know what the book was, and she said, "Why is that book moving?" And I looked at it, And it was, the cover was kind of flapping up and down. There was no wind in there or anything going, no windows open. And when I went over there to open it up, I looked inside the cover, and in pencil, it was written "Hello."
Oh
Well,
my
I
God.
took that book and I went out into the back by the garbage can and I burned it.
Yeah, to say the least.
I just didn't want to take a chance. I have several copies of The Long Lost Friend now I've purchased, and I do keep them around me. It's just a superstition thing with me, I guess, talisman thing. But there have been times when I have looked at it and advised people who have been interested in it and such. So that's my powwow story. But I had family, and Remar, actually, the guy who was killed, was a relative of mine through my grandmother, my paternal grandmother's side. And I didn't know that until I found that out later. But she's the one who had told me about the whole thing when I was younger, because it happened back in the early 30s. And it was a big case. It was a national case. So yeah.
Well, I remember reading about, with the hex, especially up in Pennsylvania and up all in that area, with the symbols being on people's barns, painted on their barns
Yeah,
and
the hex
stuff, with
signs.
protection and whatnot.
Oh, I
And
got one right behind me.
yeah, I saw that.
That's the double distal think. That's a good luck. That's a good luck hex sign.
Cool. Now I know down here we have, with Cajun people, they have their own type of medicine woman called a traiteur, and they basically the same kind of thing. I had always heard about them, but it wasn't. My son was about, I guess, about 5 or 6, maybe 7. Um, One day he just suddenly started complaining about his ear hurt, and we went to go look, see what was wrong with his ear, and he was burning up with a fever. And so my husband and I are running around the house trying to put things together, because going to Charity Hospital, you're going to be there a while, and trying to put everything together, go to the emergency room. And here comes my neighbor from next door, a real hillbilly kind of woman. That's how I always thought of her. Just as nice as could be. But she showed up, knocked on the door, wanting to borrow an egg or a cup of sugar or something. I don't remember. We were like, yeah, come on in, help yourself. I remember she looked at my son and she said, "What's wrong with Lewis?" And we were like, "He's running a fever. He's got an earache. We're going to the ER." And she was like, "Well, can I pray over him first?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure. Knock yourself out." She went and sat down with him and started rubbing her hands together. And then she put her hands over his ear and started speaking in a language I'd never heard before. And she did this for like about 5 minutes. And then she moved him back on the couch and got up and took her cup of whatever she borrowed and said, "He should be okay now." And she left. Before we could turn around to finish putting stuff together, he was bouncing off the walls perfectly normal. No earache, no fever, no nothing. She healed him that quick. And it was an eye opener. My husband and I both were looking at each other going, "Oh my God, did we just see what we think we just saw?" And so that was kind of wild. And
yeah, here in Pennsylvania, we've got the Appalachian Mountains here, but of course, most of the folk magic is powwowing. And up in the mountains west of here, there are other Appalachian folk magic, root conjuring as you go further south, down into North Carolina and that area. And I have family from Western North Carolina, so I know all about that too. I kind of got them coming from both sides, So
yeah,
I knew a lot about all this, a lot of the root conjuring and the folk magic. But and I'm not going to say I haven't tried using in the past, because I have, but I don't necessarily know it's really worked. But I've heard a lot of different things, and of course I I have actually done cases involving Cajun, or not Cajun, Creole religions, like voodoo and hoodoo and Obe and other, religions of the Caribbean and the southern states. And I've been involved with several cases involved with those. So yeah, it's an interesting subject. I'm not a very religious person, quite honestly, but I do find some of the dogma and aspects of religion, and especially the occult and folk magic involved with them, is being very interesting. Of course, you're in that part of the country where there's a lot of that going around, and yeah, and I have talked to people in the past down in your way who've been involved with a lot of that, but no, the Creole religions really do interest me.
Sharon is our super mod.
Yeah, I see
This
she's putting my
woman is
books up
on
there.
everybody's channel as a moderator, and once she gets in there, oh my God, she's posting everything. You can't keep up with her. Thank you very much, Sharon. I appreciate it. Like I said, all this stuff is in the description box below, but this kind of helps being in the chat as well. Y'all can click on it and check it out. But it's yeah, I mean, all that stuff is wild. I mean, of course down here you have, the traiteurs, the good Cajun folk music, medicine, and then of course you have the voodoo or the hoodoo, both, which can be a lot scarier and a lot worse. Doesn't necessarily mean all of it is evil or being used for that, because there are some really proficient voodoo people down here that do just use it for good, but it takes a while to kind of figure out who's who and what they're doing, and like I said, I've always been so intrigued by it. I think a lot of it is just because of growing up in the area, and it's kind of in the blood. So
Well, you're a creature of your locale. I mean, anybody who,
yeah, too. And my mother was not a religious person. She was like, believe what you want to believe, just leave me out of it. Now she had her own beliefs and she stuck to them,
yeah,
but she didn't share them with people or talk about it or anything like that. That was just her personal thing, and it was like she didn't need to explain to anybody why she believed what she believed or did what she did. It was I know one of my mother's strongest gifts was she would have visions of people dying. She would see their deaths, especially if it was a tragic death. And the only reason why I even know that is because when I was about 12 or 13, I guess, we were living in Florida, and she was a bartender at the NCO club across the street from the base. And one night she's in there tending bar, and a couple of retired flight instructors, pilots, were sitting at a table with some other guys. And she's sitting there and she just kind of looking around, seeing if anybody needs a refill. And suddenly she has this vision of these two men in a plane together, and the plane exploding in midair and killing them. And it freaked her out so bad she said she dropped the glass she was holding into the sink and it broke. And suddenly a man off to her left in the closed in section of the bar, the only way he could have got there is if he would have walked past her, and he never did. But he was sitting there and he just said, "Don't tell them what you saw." And she just looked at him and she said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Don't tell them what you saw." And she turned and she looked back, and there's the men sitting there at the table. She turned back to the guy at the bar to say why. There was nobody there. He was gone. Just poof, disappeared. And sure enough, the next day, these two trainers were on base, and the pilots that were supposed to take this plane up to test flight, got sick and they weren't able to make it. And so they volunteered to take it up. And it exploded in midair and killed them both. And the reason why I know about it is because it freaked her out so badly. She came home, she was almost hysterical. Her sister also lived in Florida at the time, who had come to the house, and she was telling her sister what was going on. And my aunt was like, you know, this happens, just, it's going to be all right. It's just what you experience. That's your gift. You just got to deal with it. And so I was like, okay, Mama has the gift too. I mean, it was like we all knew that all the women had it, but like I said, nobody talked about it. So nobody really quite knew what anyone could do unless they discussed it, and it just wasn't discussed. But yeah,
Well, here in the mountains, here in the mountains they call it the Shining.
Yeah,
and you have the Shining, and I have known of several people who have known people who have had that abilities. But you know, it all ties in together. Like I said before, we're all a product of our locale, and you know, in my case,
yeah.
I've had so many. My family background is so diverse. With so many, my family came here in the early 1600s from 1700s from Switzerland during the Reformation, and they were Anabaptists. So many of them were either Amish or Mennonites, and a lot of my family, the Strickler family, were, you know, Mennonites and Amish up until maybe the early part of the 20th century, and then they kind of branched out. But you know, I've got family from down North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and there's a lot of root conjuring and a lot of folk healing down there. I was raised a Lutheran, but of course, I'm just not very religious now because I kind of, and the reason I think is not that I don't really believe, it's just that I see too much diversity out there to be pinned down on one.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's so many opportunities to be able to use certain aspects of that. And yeah, I mean, and it's something I've taken advantage of.
Oh yeah. I mean, as you meet people, as you grow, you know, and you start learning that you're not the only one that can do this. Other people can do this, you know, and then you have all the different areas of healings and other types of medicine man type, you know, type of medicine, you know, or healings. It can be a little off-putting for some people. You know, they don't understand it. I mean, I grew up, like I said, my mother wasn't religious. She didn't belong to any religion. She raised my brother and I to, you know, believe what you want to believe. If you want to go to church, go to church. You know, if you don't, okay, too. That's fine. In high school, my two best friends, one was Jewish, one was Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So every Friday night, we all went to temple together. Every Sunday morning, we all went to mass together. I figured, hey, I'm getting both books in the Bible. You know, how can you beat that?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I still, you know, I have my own beliefs and I don't ascribe to any one particular faith or religion, but I think a lot of that is just because I've seen so much, like you said, diversity, just so many different things. And now, I mean, I work at a university in computer science. So I'm surrounded by students and faculty from around the world with every different belief avenue you can go with. And I just enjoy hearing them talk about this, that, or the other. And I mean, we have a fairly large Indian population here from Indian. And so we have a big holy festival every spring, the Festival of Colors, where people go, they go outside and literally you're throwing colored powder up in the air, cornstarch, and you get nasty, filthy, but it's fun. Um, Several of our faculty are real involved in that. We have several Buddhists that I work with, several Muslims that I work with. Um, I know one guy who has pretty much kind of walked away from the Muslim faith, but when he first started working with us, we were hired at the same time. He's one of our faculty. And when Ramadan came around for the first time, he was walking around everywhere and giving everybody chocolates to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, oh, that's really cool, And so when Christmas came around, I put a Christmas card and a peppermint in his mailbox. And he came to me and he was like, "You gave me a Christmas card." And I said, "Yeah, it's Christmas time." He says, "But I'm not Christian." I said, "You don't have to be Christian to celebrate Christmas." He was like, "Well, isn't that a religious holiday?" I said, "It can be for some people." I said, "For most people, it's just a holiday. It's a reason to act silly and spend too much money and eat till you explode." I said,
Mm-hmm.
I said, "I don't subscribe to any one particular thought pattern on that, but I enjoy the holiday for the holiday. It's just fun. It's makes you feel like a kid again." And he was just so touched that I gave him a Christmas card. And it wasn't a religious card. I think it was Santa Claus on it or something. And I'm now surrogate nana to his baby. So he married an Oklahoma girl. That was an interesting conversation. He said his first trip home with her, meeting all of her relatives. But it's really cool, to be around people from all different faiths, all different walks of life. I get a big kick out of it. We're running just a little over an hour here. Do you need to go? I know you're still recuperating from surgery.
Yeah, I am kind of recuperating.
And
I get tired quickly.
You're starting to look a little droopy.
Yeah,
and I don't want to tire you out.
It takes its toll as you get later in the day. I got to go out and do some walking yet tonight, but yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up then. Okay. I can thank everybody.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's good to see and talk to you again.
It's good to see and talk to you again, too. It's been too long.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, give me a shout. Your girl there that's getting ready to start her show, kind of more on our end of things. Tell her, give me a holler. I'd be glad to be a guest.
I will do that.
And absolutely. Several other people that are here in the chat that are into the paranormal and the cryptid stuff. I mean, I've directed them all, I think, to your channel and said, "Hey, just go check out Lon."
If you've got a report, a sighting, or an encounter, feel free to contact me through. You can go to Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com, or you can go to the website at phantomsandmonsters.com, and I'd be more than happy to look at it.
Yep, I've got all those links in the description box below, and Sharon has faithfully been reposting them in the chat for everybody. So, Lon, thank you so much for coming. I know I kind of caught you in a downtime.
Oh, that's all right.
And but I am really happy that you were able to come.
Well, you take care.
A little time with us, and
you have a good weekend then.
You too. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You're
welcome to come back anytime. If any of your people want to hop over on this side of the aisle and do a show, tell them, give me a call.
Okay, and, sounds good.
We'll put something together. And thank you everybody in chat for being here, all the subscribers, all the moderators. Thank you for posting everything and kind of keeping up with all that was going on in the chat, helping me out with that. I appreciate it. And we're going to say goodnight now and let Lon go do his walk and then get some rest so that he can recuperate faster.
Good night, everybody.
And, y'all have a good evening. Good night now.